What happens when one of Hollywood's most beloved actresses goes head-to-head with late-night television's sharpest tongue? Tonight, we're diving into the explosive confrontation that had everyone talking. The moment when Diane Keaton and Jimmy Kimmel turned a routine interview into television gold that nobody saw coming. Before we get into this incredible story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment letting me know what you think really happened here. Because trust me, you're going to have opinions about this one. The studio lights are blazing as Jimmy Kimmel welcomes his guest with his trademark grin. Ladies and gentlemen, the incomparable Diane Keaton. The audience erupts in applause as the legendary actress makes her entrance, waving to the crowd with that distinctive Keaton charm that has captivated audiences for decades. "Diane, welcome back to the show," Jimmy says, his voice carrying that familiar late-night warmth. "It's always a pleasure to have you here." "Well, Jimmy, it's always interesting to be here," Diane responds. And there's something in her tone, a slight edge that makes you lean forward in your chair. She's smiling, but anyone who knows Diane Keaton knows that smile can mean a lot of different things. Jimmy launches into his first question, clearly prepared with his usual arsenal of jokes and observations. "So, Diane, I have to ask about your new project. I understand you're working on something that's got everyone in Hollywood buzzing. Tell us about it." Diane shifts in her chair, and for a moment her expression changes. "You know, Jimmy, I'm curious about something. Do you actually read the materials your producers give you? Or do you just wing it based on whatever gossip you've heard?" The audience laughs, thinking this is part of the show's natural banter. But Jimmy's smile falters for just a second. "Well, I do my homework, Diane. I always prepare for my guests." "Really?" Diane's eyebrows raise, and there's a challenge in her voice now. "Because what you just described as my new project sounds nothing like anything I'm actually working on. In fact, it sounds like you're confusing me with someone else entirely." Jimmy tries to recover with a laugh, but you can see the wheels turning. "Well, maybe I got some details mixed up. Why don't you tell us what you're really working on?" "That's not the point, Jimmy." Diane leans forward, and the energy in the room shifts completely. "The point is that you've invited me on your show, and you haven't bothered to do the basic research to know what I'm here to talk about. That's not just unprofessional, it's disrespectful." The audience is still laughing, but it's nervous laughter now. They can sense something real is happening. Something that's gone beyond the carefully choreographed dance of late-night television. Jimmy's trying to keep things light, but there's tension in his voice. "Diane, I apologize if I got some facts wrong. Sometimes the information we get isn't always perfectly accurate. Sometimes." Diane's voice rises slightly. "Jimmy, this isn't the first time this has happened. I've been on your show before, and the same thing occurred. You asked me about projects I'd never heard of. Made assumptions about my personal life that were completely wrong. And when I tried to correct you, you just laughed it off like it was all part of the show." The camera catches Jimmy's face, and for the first time, his famous composure is cracking. "Diane, I think maybe you're being a little harsh here." "Am I?" Diane's response is sharp, cutting through the studio air like a blade. "Let me ask you something, Jimmy. When you have male actors on your show, do you spend half the interview asking them about their romantic relationships and their age? Do you make jokes about their appearance or their personal choices?" Jimmy's mouth opens, but no words come out immediately. The audience has gone quiet now, sensing that they're witnessing something unprecedented. "Because that's what you do with actresses, Jimmy. That's what you've done with me every single time I've been here. You reduce us to punchlines and gossip fodder, instead of treating us like the professionals we are." "Diane, I never meant to." "Oh, you never meant to." Diane interrupts, her voice carrying decades of frustration. "That's the problem right there. You never mean to, but you do it anyway. You perpetuate these patterns without even thinking about it. And then when someone calls you out, you act like it's their fault for being too sensitive." Jimmy's trying to regain control of the situation, but Diane Keaton is just getting started. "Look, Diane, I respect you tremendously. You're an incredible actress, and I would never intentionally disrespect you. But you do disrespect me, Jimmy. You just did it again by dismissing my concerns as if they're unreasonable. This isn't about you being intentionally malicious. This is about a system that treats women differently. And you're part of that system, whether you want to admit it or not." The studio audience doesn't know how to react. Some are clapping, some are silent, and you can feel the energy shifting with every word. This isn't entertainment anymore. This is a real conversation happening in front of millions of people. Jimmy takes a deep breath, and you can see him trying to decide how to handle this. "Diane, I hear what you're saying, but I think you might be reading too much into. Reading too much into what? Diane's voice cuts through his response like a knife. Into the fact that you started this interview by asking me about a project that doesn't exist? Into the fact that your questions are consistently different for women than they are for men? Into the fact that you're right now, in this moment, telling me that my experience of being disrespected is somehow wrong. The tension in the room is palpable now. Jimmy Kimmel, the man who has navigated thousands of interviews with grace and humor, is facing something he's never encountered before. Diane Keaton isn't just answering his questions or playing along with his jokes. She's holding up a mirror to his entire approach, and the reflection isn't flattering. Diane, I think we might be having a misunderstanding here, Jimmy says, his voice carefully controlled. I'm not trying to dismiss your feelings, but I think you're being unfair to me and to the show. Unfair. Diane's laugh is sharp and humorless. Jimmy, do you know how many interviews I've done over the years? Do you know how many times I've smiled and laughed along while hosts made jokes at my expense, asked inappropriate questions, or treated me like I was there for their entertainment rather than as a professional with something meaningful to contribute? The camera captures every nuance of this exchange, and you can see the audience members looking at each other, unsure of whether they should be laughing, clapping, or remaining silent. This has become something none of them expected when they came to see a taping of Jimmy Kimmel Live. I've been doing this for decades, Jimmy, and I'm tired of pretending that it's okay. I'm tired of being polite when I'm being disrespected. I'm tired of making everyone else comfortable while I'm being made uncomfortable. Jimmy's face shows a mix of confusion, frustration, and something that might be the beginning of understanding. Jimmy, Diane, I really don't think I was being disrespectful. I was trying to have a conversation about your career. Diane, you were trying to have a conversation about what you thought my career was, based on information you clearly didn't bother to verify. That's not a conversation, Jimmy. That's you using me as a prop for your show. The exchange is escalating, and you can sense that something big is about to happen. The energy in the room has shifted completely, from the jovial atmosphere of a typical late-night talk show to something much more serious and confrontational. Jimmy, Diane, I think maybe we should take a break, Jimmy suggests. But his guest is having none of it. Diane, a break. Diane's voice carries a tone of incredulity. Jimmy, we're having a real conversation for the first time since I walked out here. Why would you want to take a break from that? And with those words, the confrontation that started as a simple interview miscommunication has become something much bigger. Something that will define this moment in television history. The real fireworks are just beginning. Jimmy's suggestion for a break hangs in the air like a challenge. And Diane Keaton's response makes it clear. She's not backing down. The studio audience can feel the electricity crackling between the host and his guest. What started as uncomfortable laughter has turned into pin-drop silence. Diane, you know what, Jimmy? Let's keep going, Diane says, her voice steady but charged with energy. Let's have that real conversation you seem so eager to avoid. Let's talk about why you think it's okay to wing it when you have a woman on your show. But I bet you wouldn't dare do that with, say, Robert De Niro or Al Pacino. Jimmy's jaw tightens, and for the first time, you can see his famous composure really starting to crack. Jimmy, Diane, that's not fair. I prepare for every guest the same way. Diane, do you? Diane's challenge is direct and unwavering. Because I've watched your show, Jimmy. I've seen how you interview men versus how you interview women. With men, you talk about their craft, their upcoming projects, their creative process. With women, you ask about their love lives, their age, their appearance, their personal drama. Jimmy, that's not true, Jimmy protests. But there's uncertainty in his voice now. Diane, really? When was the last time you asked a male actor about his skincare routine? When was the last time you made a joke about a man's relationship status or asked him if he's planning to have more children? The audience shifts uncomfortably. Some people are nodding along with Diane's points, while others look confused about what they're witnessing. This isn't the light-hearted entertainment they came for. Jimmy tries to regain his footing. Jimmy, Diane, I ask questions that I think the audience wants to hear about. People are interested in celebrities' personal lives. Diane, there it is, Diane says, pointing at him with a knowing look. You just proved my point. You see male celebrities as professionals and female celebrities as objects of curiosity. You think people want to hear about our personal lives because that's how you've been trained to think about women in this industry. Jimmy, I don't think that's fair, Jimmy responds, his voice rising slightly. I've had plenty of serious conversations with female guests about their work. Diane, have you? Because I can name 5 interviews from the past month where you spent more time talking to actresses about their outfits than their performances. Can you name 5 interviews where you did that with male actors? Jimmy's mouth opens and closes, clearly struggling to find a response. The cameras are capturing every moment of his discomfort, every second where his usual quick wit fails him. Jimmy, I think you're cherry-picking examples to make your point, he finally says. Diane, am I, or am I pointing out a pattern that you've never bothered to notice because it doesn't affect you? Diane's response is swift and cutting. Jimmy, you're a smart man. You're successful, you're influential, and you have a platform that reaches millions of people. Don't you think you have a responsibility to think about the messages you're sending? Jimmy, I'm not sending any messages, Jimmy says defensively. I'm just trying to entertain people. Diane, entertainment isn't neutral, Jimmy. The way you choose to entertain people says something about what you think is important, what you think is funny, what you think is worth talking about. The tension is building to a breaking point. You can see it in Jimmy's face, in the way he's gripping his cards, in the way his leg is bouncing under the desk. This is not going the way he expected, and he's clearly struggling with how to handle it. Jimmy, Diane, I think you're being unreasonable, he says. And the moment those words leave his mouth, you can see he knows he's made a mistake. Diane, unreasonable? Diane's voice carries a dangerous edge now. Jimmy, let me tell you what's unreasonable. What's unreasonable is that I have to explain to a grown man why treating women differently than men is problematic. What's unreasonable is that I have to defend my right to be treated with the same respect you automatically give to my male colleagues. Jimmy, I do treat you with respect, Jimmy insists, but his voice sounds hollow now. Diane, no, you don't. You treat me like a novelty. You treat me like I'm here for your amusement. And when I try to have a serious conversation about it, you tell me I'm being unreasonable. The audience is completely silent now. This has gone beyond awkward into something genuinely uncomfortable and real. People are looking at each other, at the exits, at their phones. This isn't what they signed up for. Jimmy tries a different approach. Jimmy, Diane, look, maybe we got off on the wrong foot tonight. Why don't we start over? Start over. Diane laughs, but there's no humor in it. Jimmy, this isn't a bad first date. This is a pattern of behavior that you've been displaying for years. And when someone finally calls you out on it, you want to start over. I'm trying to find a way to move forward. Here, Jimmy says, his frustration becoming more apparent. Move forward to what? To you asking me about my dating life? To you making jokes about my age? To you treating me like I'm here to be your entertainment instead of your equal? Jimmy's hands are fidgeting with his note cards now, and you can see sweat starting to form on his forehead. Diane, I never said you weren't my equal. You don't have to say it, Jimmy. You show it in every question you ask, every assumption you make. Every time you dismiss my concerns as unreasonable. I'm not dismissing your concerns, Jimmy protests, but his voice lacks conviction. You literally just told me I was being unreasonable for pointing out your double standards. How is that not dismissing my concerns? The back and forth is relentless now. Diane Keaton has Jimmy Kimmel on the defensive, and he's clearly not used to being in this position. His usual charm and quick wit are failing him because this isn't a comedy bit or a scripted moment. This is a real confrontation with real stakes. Look, Diane, I apologize if I've ever made you feel disrespected. That was never my intention. Your intention doesn't matter as much as your impact, Jimmy. And the impact of your approach is that you perpetuate harmful stereotypes about women in this industry. I don't think that's fair, Jimmy says again, falling back on the same defense. Fair. Diane's voice rises. You know what's not fair? Having to smile and nod while you reduce my decades of work to gossip and speculation. You know what's not fair? Being expected to be grateful for the opportunity to be disrespected on national television. The energy in the room has shifted completely. The audience members are no longer just uncomfortable. They're witnessing something historic. This is a moment where the usual power dynamics of late-night television are being completely upended. Jimmy makes one more attempt to regain control. Diane, I think we're both getting a little heated here. Maybe we should take a step back. I'm not heated, Jimmy. I'm clear. I'm clearer than I've ever been. And I'm not going to step back from pointing out behavior that needs to be called out. I don't think my behavior needs to be called out, Jimmy responds, and the defensiveness in his voice is unmistakable now. Of course you don't. That's exactly the problem. The confrontation has reached a crescendo with both participants fully committed to their positions. Jimmy Kimmel, the master of late-night comedy, is finding himself outmaneuvered by an actress who has decided she's done playing by the rules that have governed these interactions for decades. Diane, I respect your right to your opinion, but I disagree with your characterization of how I conduct interviews. You can disagree all you want, Jimmy, but that doesn't change the reality of what happens when women come on this show versus when men do. The battle lines are drawn. Neither side is backing down, and the audience can sense that something unprecedented is about to happen. This conversation has moved far beyond the realm of typical late-night television into something much more significant and confrontational. I think we're going to have to agree to disagree, Jimmy says finally, his voice tight with frustration. No, Jimmy, we're not going to agree to disagree. We're going to continue this conversation until you actually hear what I'm saying. And with that declaration, it becomes clear that Diane Keaton has no intention of letting this moment pass quietly into late-night television history. The real confrontation is just reaching its peak. Diane's declaration that she won't let this conversation end hangs in the air like a gauntlet thrown down. Jimmy Kimmel's face shows a mixture of disbelief and growing anger as he realizes his guest has completely taken control of his own show. Diane, you're being incredibly unfair right now, Jimmy says, his voice carrying an edge that his audience has rarely heard. I've been nothing but respectful to you. Respectful. Diane's laugh is sharp and incredulous. Jimmy, you started this interview by asking me about a project that doesn't exist. You've spent the last 20 minutes telling me that my experience of being disrespected is somehow wrong. How exactly is that respectful? Jimmy's composure is cracking visibly now. His face is flushed. His hands are gripping the edge of his desk, and his voice is getting tighter with each exchange. I made one mistake about your project, and you've turned it into this whole attack on my character and my show. One mistake. Diane's voice rises. Jimmy, this is the third time I've been on your show, and each time you've done the exact same thing. You don't prepare. You don't listen. And when I try to correct you, you act like I'm the problem. That's not true, Jimmy snaps, his famous charm completely gone now. I prepare for every show. I care about every guest, and I don't appreciate being lectured on my own program. Your program? Diane's eyebrows shoot up. There it is. Your program, your rules, your comfort zone. And anyone who challenges that is out of line, right? The audience is completely silent now. Some people looking genuinely frightened by the intensity of what they're witnessing. This has gone far beyond uncomfortable television into something that feels genuinely hostile. Diane, I think you need to calm down, Jimmy says. And the moment those words leave his mouth, you can see in his face that he knows he's made a terrible mistake. Calm down. Diane's voice cuts through the studio like a blade. Did you just tell me to calm down? Jimmy, do you have any idea how condescending that is? Do you tell your male guests to calm down when they express strong opinions? Jimmy's mouth opens and closes like a fish out of water. He's completely lost control of the situation. And worse, he's making it worse with every attempt to regain that control. I didn't mean it that way, he says weakly. You never mean it that way, do you, Jimmy? But you keep doing it anyway. You keep dismissing women's concerns. You keep telling us we're overreacting. You keep treating us like we're the problem when we point out your behavior. I don't treat women differently, Jimmy insists. But his voice lacks any conviction now. You literally just told me to calm down for expressing the same kind of passion that you celebrate when it comes from men. You think that's treating me the same? Jimmy runs his hand through his hair, clearly at a loss. Diane, I don't know what you want from me here. I want you to listen, Jimmy. I want you to actually hear what I'm saying instead of just waiting for your turn to defend yourself. I am listening, he protests. No, you're not. You're calculating. You're trying to figure out how to make this go away. How to get back to your comfort zone where you ask the questions and I give you cute answers that make your audience laugh. The tension is electric now. You can feel it crackling through the television screen, and the studio audience looks like they're watching a car accident in slow motion. This is my show, Diane, Jimmy says, his voice carrying a warning tone. I have a responsibility to my audience and my network. Your responsibility. Diane stands up now, and the gesture sends a shock wave through the studio. Your responsibility is to perpetuate harmful stereotypes. Your responsibility is to make women uncomfortable for entertainment. Jimmy's eyes widen as Diane rises from her chair. This is unprecedented. Guests don't stand up during interviews. They certainly don't tower over the host while making accusations. Diane, please return to your seat, Jimmy says, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. I'll return to my seat when you acknowledge what I'm saying instead of trying to manage me like I'm some kind of unruly child. You're being unprofessional, Jimmy says. And the words come out harsher than he clearly intended. Unprofessional. Diane's voice carries decades of frustration and anger. Jimmy, what's unprofessional is inviting someone on your show and not bothering to learn anything about them. What's unprofessional is treating your female guests like they exist for your amusement. What's unprofessional is telling someone they're being unreasonable for pointing out your mistakes. The cameras are capturing every moment of this breakdown, every second, where the carefully constructed world of late-night television is being torn apart by someone who refuses to play by its rules. I think this interview is over, Jimmy declares, reaching for what he thinks is his final card. Oh, is it? Diane's voice is deadly calm now. You're ending the interview because I won't stay in the box you've built for me. Because I won't smile and laugh while you disrespect me. You're being disrespectful to me, Jimmy shoots back, his frustration boiling over. I'm being honest with you, Jimmy. If you can't tell the difference, that says everything about why we're having this conversation in the first place. Jimmy looks toward his producers off camera, clearly seeking some kind of intervention, some way to end this nightmare that his routine interview has become. Don't look to them for help, Jimmy, Diane says, following his gaze. This is between you and me. This is about how you choose to use your platform and the responsibility that comes with it. I don't need to be lectured about responsibility by someone who's having a meltdown on my show, Jimmy snaps, his patience finally completely gone. A meltdown. Diane's voice is ice cold now. Is that what you call it when a woman refuses to accept being treated poorly? When she stands up for herself and demands better? I call it unprofessional behavior that's disrupting my show, Jimmy responds, his voice raised. Now, your show that you didn't bother to prepare for? Your show where you make assumptions about your guests instead of doing basic research? That show. The back and forth has reached a fever pitch. Both participants are fully committed to the conflict now, and there's no pretense left that this is anything other than a genuine confrontation. That's it, Jimmy says, standing up himself. Now this interview is over. Security will escort you out. Security. Diane's laugh is sharp and disbelieving. You're calling security because I called out your unprofessional behavior? Because I refused to let you disrespect me on national television? You're disrupting my show, Jimmy says, his voice shaking with anger. I'm having a conversation, Jimmy. The fact that you see that as disruptive says everything about how you view women who don't stay in their assigned roles. The studio has erupted into chaos now. You can hear producers shouting off camera, audience members talking among themselves, and the steady hum of confusion and disbelief that comes when something unprecedented happens on live television. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a commercial break, Jimmy announces to the camera. But Diane isn't finished. Don't you dare cut away from this, Jimmy. Don't you dare hide behind commercial breaks when you're being called out for behavior that needed to be addressed years ago. We're going to commercial, Jimmy repeats, his voice desperate now. Go to commercial then, Diane says, her voice carrying over the chaos. But when you come back, ask yourself if this is really the hill you want to die on. Ask yourself if protecting your ego is worth perpetuating the kind of treatment that women in this industry have been dealing with for decades. As the chaos reaches its peak, as producers scramble and audience members whisper and Jimmy Kimmel stands behind his desk looking like a man whose world has been turned upside down, Diane Keaton gathers herself with the dignity that has defined her career. Jimmy, I came here tonight to talk about my work, my craft, and my passion. Instead, I had to defend my right to be treated with basic respect. That should tell you everything you need to know about why this conversation was necessary. And with those final words, as the studio buzzes with the energy of something truly unprecedented, the confrontation that started with a simple factual error has become something much bigger. A moment where the careful politeness of celebrity interviews was shattered by someone who decided she was done pretending that disrespect was acceptable. The fallout from this explosive encounter would be talked about for years to come. But in this moment, as Diane Keaton walks away and Jimmy Kimmel stands speechless behind his desk, one thing is absolutely clear. Nothing will ever be quite the same. What do you think really happened in that studio? Was Diane Keaton right to call out what she saw as disrespectful treatment? Or did she go too far? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button for more incredible stories like this one. and let me know what other celebrity confrontations you'd like to hear about. This is the kind of raw, unfiltered moment that reminds us that behind all the glamour and scripted banter, real people with real feelings are having real conversations. And sometimes those conversations don't go according to